Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Man's World podcast, where we talk about all things related to being a man in this Western society. And today we're going to be talking about divorce and giving advice to men on this show. Next episode, we're going to be talking about, giving advice to divorced women. But here we're going to focus on the men. We got the Man's World show, so that's what we're going to talk about. So, as the show title says, does divorce have to be a failure? And how do we recover from divorce? And what's our mindset? And these are the sorts of things we're going to be answering today in this episode. If you have any questions, type them in the chat, type them in the comments, and we will get to them. So with that, let's kind of just jump right in with it. So usually when you see, especially men, for some reason, um, when there is a divorce, you see men getting this like they get stuck, and not only do they end get stuck, a lot of men get into a position where they're 10 times worse than where they were when they were actually married, or even going through a troubled marriage. And we're trying to, based off of our experiences and our knowledge, is try to address some of these issues so that when, if men, you do find yourself in a situation where you have to get divorced or you are divorced, what do you do after that? So what's the first thing that a man should be focusing on right after a divorce?
Um, I would say that to just back up just one step is that with divorce, it varies culturally, but
Hmm.
in some cultures, if you get divorced, it is a huge it's like shameful. In
Right.
others, in other cultures, people have divorce parties or whatever. They celebrate. They count down to the days that when the divorce is official. Um, and of course, there's variation in between. So um, if you do get divorced, it can be failure. You can fail in your marriage, and you can fail in your post marriage, and you can fail at divorce, or you can succeed. So it could be a setback or a thing that sets you down a path of, you know, um, trouble
Hmm.
having a really tough life, or it could be a situation where you can springboard actually getting divorced, because yes, it is a setback. You started a life with someone that you have decided not to continue that life with, or maybe they decided it for you. But it can be a situation where you could go down a path of negativity and lose out, or you can go down a path of it being a springboard for something even better. So a setback for a major comeback. So this is
Hmm.
what we hope to do here. And I would say the first thing that you need to do is you need to identify and make sure that is it a clean break? You got divorced. Your divorce is final. Whatever you decided to separate from the woman who you were married to. Now, is the relationship and the attachments and any of those things uh, is that over? And
Right.
Dr. Griffin, what would you say is one of the main things that when we talk about attachments, or is it a clean break? What are the things that maybe can identify whether it's a clean break or not?
Well, the first thing is, as a man, you're going to ask yourself, do you still have feelings for this person, right? And don't be mistaking that if your feelings are just negative, that you don't still have some sort of feelings for this individual. So that's like an internal question you have to ask yourself, and how you can identify that, because a lot of times guys are in denial about their feelings for their ex. It could be a love hate relationship. You could hate them at that moment, but you really miss them, and these sort of things. And what you could do is really sit back and, can you go through an hour without thinking about the person? Can you go through a half a day without thinking about the person? Can you go through a whole day without thinking about the person? When you're in those quiet moments, because like this is what guys do when we get in these troubles, a lot of, and it's good because it helps us heal and move on and all that. We busy ourselves, right? We'll either start like, if it's positive, we'll go work out, or we'll go do a project, or we'll get involved in something. But you really have to test this when you're in those quiet places when there's nothing else to do. And does your mind just drive back to like reminiscing about the good times, you know, blaming and hating yourself or hating the person for the position you're in? Where does your mind go when you're at rest and at ease and have nothing to distract yourself from it? And that's how you can tell if you have those feelings. And if you still do have those feelings, you have to find a way to kind of break away from that.
All right. Well. Let me let
Yep.
me let me jump in here. What's wrong with me having those feelings? If I if I still have feelings, what's it? What's wrong with that? What's so? I'm not acting on them. I'm not hurting
Mhm.
anybody. Then what's the big deal?
Well, see, you might say, okay, there's nothing wrong. I'm not acting on them. I'm still trying to move on or whatever. The problem is that you don't realize how much your emotions and your mental state it actually does take away from, I would say, your personal resources to do anything else, right? Whether that's going to work out, whether that's going to your job, whether that's going to take steps to find a new wife, whatever it is, that emotional attachment is pretty much like there's a documentary on I watched on the mythical Buddha, right? Who knows if he actually existed or not, right? But the mythical Buddha. And one of the things that they report about him is that when he got married, because he was married, he got married and had a child, and he referred to them as the ball and chain, right? Basically, just holding him back. That emotional attachment is a ball and chain that is holding you back from progressing to where you need to be to actually turn this into, as we say, a major comeback. So that's really the problem with it.
Okay, so I got two questions. I'm gonna say the first one and then
Yeah.
I'll leave the next one for last. But the first thing is, okay, if a person says, listen, I don't want to think about this other person, but what can I do? I mean, it's just happening. I can't control my feelings. I mean, if I have, a certain feeling or affinity for one thing or another, I mean, that's, how's that my fault?
Yeah.
What can I do? Is there anything that I can do to get rid of the feeling?
Yes, there's some practical things you can do, and again, there's it's going to be tough for some people. It's going to be easier for other people. But like for instance, myself, I can cut a tie and move on within 5 seconds flat. Right? That's me. Not everybody's like me. Someone else it might take more time. But even though I'm like that, I still took practical steps to ensure I was not being dragging along this baggage. Like for instance, okay, you're divorced, no chance of getting back. You don't want to get back, or she doesn't want you back, whatever it is. First thing you could do is delete all the pictures you have of that person, right? Actual physical action. I'm getting rid of all these pictures out of my phone so I don't find myself bored and going through old pictures and go, oh man, I remember those days. Nah, delete, see you later, right? You might have her name stored in your phone as Honey Boo Boo Bear or whatever it is, right? Nope, your name is now so and so, right? These, and there's a bunch of little things like this you could do to basically train yourself that okay, no, this is over, right? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I,
Practical actions you could do.
I would add to that a major one is the social media. Don't follow their social media accounts, you know,
Exactly.
because what you have is a lot of times you have them trying to show how well they're doing. It could be true. Hopefully, it is true. They're doing great. It shouldn't matter to you how well they're doing after you've broken up. As a matter of fact,
Yep.
it should have no effect on you whether she went on to have the greatest life and relationship and got rich or whatever as soon as y'all left. And of course, you're a human being, like, dang man, she really leveled up after me. But the thing is, you really should. detach yourself from that. If you struggle with that, like me, I know lots of men that can just, I mean, they might cut the emotional cord during the relationship, let alone and no issue after. During,
Right.
when they realize that it's over, they already checked out. But
Yeah.
for some, it is an issue, and we don't really have time to get to all the personality types that might struggle with it. But if you are a person who struggles with it, you cannot interact with her social media. So don't follow her on any of her accounts. Mute her WhatsApp status updates or whatever. Don't check them. There's a way that you can mute those, where you don't even have to see it. So
Yeah.
they could be posting all types of stuff, trying to troll you, trying to talk bad about you, subliminal messages about, you or how great they're doing. You will never see it because you have muted all the things, you've unfollowed them on everything. So it will have no effect on you. So if you really want to make that clean break, what we're talking about is you need to take those steps where the only reason why you will see or hear that other person is if you're forced to, like kid handoffs or something like that, or there's some actual business you have to do, you got to see him in court or something like that. Other than that, your life should be completely eliminated. And if you don't have any kids or your kids are already grown, I mean, it's easy work. You should really be, that part of your life should be completely eliminated. And if you're not doing that, then you will put yourself in the category of one of those people we're talking about, where it can either be a minor setback for a major comeback or a major setback that continues to snowball if you keep to hang on to something that's not there. It wasn't successful. It wasn't something that was beneficial during the relationship. Otherwise, it wouldn't have ended. And it's a person who, the relationship is not a positive one because you actually broke up, And I will lead to the next step before we move on, is that the last question I have on this particular topic is, would you, okay, let me say this. Is there any scenario in which you could justify a man whose wife left him either for another guy or just said, I don't like you anymore, I don't love you, I don't want you, that they left? Is there any scenario in which you would say or advise a man to then actively pursue her still? Baby, come back, let's get back together, let's try again, these type of things. Is there anything you can have for some of these people who, are in that mode?
So I'll say this. So there's no scenario where a man should, in that situation, be like that. Even if you really do want them back and your goal is to get them back. Because we'll tell you straight up, if your goal is you want to actually get that person back, we can have another conversation about whether you should be pursuing that or not. But the best chances you have of getting that person back is to actually act like you don't want them back. Right? Because as soon as you hit the baby, I want you back, you basically kind of just you put yourself into like, I'm not going back to him unless he's the last man on earth, right? Type of situation. And I wanted to, because this actually connects to something that popped in my head when you were speaking, is that a lot of guys, when they're in that situation where it wasn't their choice to end the marriage or end the relationship, they fall for this, like, I don't know what, I'm going to just make up a term, like post-divorce friend zone, right? Where the lady, like she, let's just make up a scenario. She's done with him. She wants to go play the market. She wants to go live her life, right? But she finds out that it ain't really out there. But what she'll do is she'll go back to her ex and use him as entertainment, right? To bide her time while she's still out there playing. She's like, oh yeah, I was thinking about us. Maybe there is just basically playing him because he's still going to give her money, give her attention, maybe make a house call or two, how now Muslims do. But at the same time, she really has no intentions of actually getting back with you. But meanwhile, how most guys think, right? If a cashier is nice to us, we're like, oh, she's into me, right? No, it's called good customer service. When your ex is doing that and you actually like, no, I do want this lady back, they're actually playing you. So like, the best position you could be in is to actually like, no, I'm moving, I want my life. And then after they realize like, oh, that person doesn't want me anymore, it's a weird psychology with women. They're actually going to have a higher chance of pursuing you or taking you back.
And sometimes men fall for the trap of sometimes they will find and they will be surprised and they're like, hey, my ex is being way nicer to me than she ever was when we were married. I
Yep.
said that is a trap. I don't want to say it's a trap, but it is the same way. Probably it's probably that she's probably behaving similar to how she behaved before you got married. And that is the thing is she's on the market. She's out and open on her own. Maybe, especially if she doesn't have a man or whatever, maybe she's wanting or hoping for someone better than you.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, just like probably when she got with you, she wanted someone better, but or that she thought was better, but decided, all right, well, we'll do it. And so some of that being nice is really them just, as Dr. Griffin said, they're pretty much just trying to keep some insurance policy around. And it
Yes.
might not even be intentional. It's just their nature. You know,
Yeah.
if you ever heard of the friend zone, like you said, I mean, just women in general put lots of, or they will try to put lots of men in the friend zone to
Mm-hmm.
reap benefits, to get money, to get rides, to get help with their homework, to to get them to beat somebody up, to have a place to stay, whatever. So don't go for that. Listen, the only reason why you should be friendly or a friend with a woman is if a you're married to them, be
Mm-hmm.
their family member. Other than that, that friendship is not going to produce, anything that's going to be beneficial for you.
Yeah.
Uh, it really usually these friendships leads to one in one direction, and a lot of times the man is pretty clear on what direction it should go, and the woman is, you know, it depends. So
Yeah.
stay out of the friend zone. Don't fall for it. Either you are in a relationship with the person or you're not. And if you're
Yeah.
not, they're just like anybody else. And you try as hard as you can to put them in that category as soon as you can. When the relationship is over, try to put them in the category as anyone else you might, come across. It's not necessarily may not be easy, but it's something that you have to do. If you can successfully do it, then you can get your clean break and then you can set yourself up for that major comeback.
And I would say just to and also segue to the next part of this is that if you're divorced, right, and for the non-Muslim audience that's listening to us, we speak in terms of relationship as marriage, right? Because that's the best way to go. You don't have boyfriend girlfriend. You're setting yourself up for failure right there. But we're talking about relationships. We're talking about a marriage, and after the marriage is over, and you're not like I want this person back, and you're trying to move on. You're trying to come up for the major comeback. You really should have that X. There's only one situation really where you should have any type of contact, communication, or every interaction at all is that it's if you have children. Like Mubarak said, like you shouldn't be friends with anybody, but you could be cordial with your co-parent, right? But you're not friends. If there's no kids involved, there's really the only time that you should ever hear anything about your ex is if her new husband is contacting you because he wants to know, like, hey, why'd y'all get divorced or something? I'm thinking about marrying this lady. That's the only thing. Like, oh yeah, I haven't talked to this lady in since the debt ran out. That's it. And so, like, when we talk about when we have like children, what is some advice for that you have for men that like they're in a divorce but that there's children involved?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But and one thing, even with the children, as you mentioned, even with the children, there also is a lesser degree where there's element of sometimes you have mutual friends, like for instance, if your brother-in-law or sister-in-law, you may have become good friends with them, and so
Mm-hmm.
then when a relationship ends, sometimes it makes that relationship a little strained or whatever. I mean, it's just like my brother-in-law.
Yep.
It's already straight up. If he leaves my sister, he's getting kirked. I mean, it's just straight up. He can't do it. We're definitely gonna have beef. No, I'm joking.
Bro, watch it out.
And then no take backs. There's no take backs. No, but seriously, Sometimes our relationships can be strained with the family members. Sometimes you become good friends with your father-in-law, mother-in-law, or something like that. And sometimes that makes that clean break a little bit uncomfortable, whatever. But still, you got to make the effort to do it. And even
Yep.
with the children and child support, alimony, it's all kind of tied in together, because if you have children, most likely that man is going to be paying some sort of child support if they're younger.
Yep.
And so that kind of, keeps you a little bit tethered to them as far as your finances is mixed up. And then, you're going back and forth and trying to either get it lowered or trying to avoid it, or, in these things. So it's something that if you do have the kids, it's I don't want to say it's unavoidable, but you know, you could set whatever your payments are on direct deposit, or automatic.
Yep.
Sometimes they garnish your checks. If you have one of those that didn't, and then it's already done for you. I mean, you're going to be pissed every time. I mean, listen, every man who has to pay even some child support, every time they cut the check or send, they, yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of definitely rubs you the wrong way. But that is something that makes it a little more complicated, but it's still doable. Just pay the money. As far as the Muslim concerned, we can look at it as every penny that we are paying, it's 100% sadaqah. It's a 100% charity. And we're going to get rewarded for every bit of it. And if that
Yep.
other person misappropriates it in any way, then it'll be recorded in a good way for you and negative for them. Not that you're wishing
Yep.
something bad for them, but hey, listen, whatever soothes your heart.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's very important for that, when men, you're going through this, that, um, and we can go on, you can look this stuff up online and do your own research, but just know that your children are going to go through stuff emotionally. You're going to deal with all sorts of different possibilities with the children going through divorce. Um, and there's too many different situations to even talk about what your children could do or not do in this situation. But don't forget that you are still a parent, and just because you are divorced doesn't stop your parenting duties and responsibilities. So just make sure you take care of that. And yeah, just like Mark said, the big thing that's going to come out of that is you have to adjust financially to the new bills pretty much that you have to pay. And don't think that this is more of the preparing for divorce. Don't think that, oh, I'm going to get divorced and I'm going to have more money because I have less mouths to feed. Nope. I'll give you a very simple example is that if say for instance, it takes, and I'm going to just make an arbitrary number. It takes $100. It took $100 for you to feed your children and clothe them for the month. Don't think that you're going to get in a divorce and then that you're only going to be paying $100 to feed and clothe your children for a month, because all those numbers are going to skyrocket. You just have to be prepared for it, prepare for the worst case scenario, and just deal with it accordingly. We'll have more shows and episodes specific, and we have some already specifically on divorce and child custody and co-parenting and all that. So, and this part is really part about like you really have to adjust to this new situation that you're actually in. Like you really have to flip your mindset to like, okay, I'm not a married man anymore. Everything is changing and you have to adjust accordingly. So that's like the big advice out of a lot of the stuff that we're going to be telling you guys.
Yeah. And I think like adjusting to the new reality is something that that I think, well, it's not just men. I mean, I think men and women do it, but for the men in particular, if a man can understand this, and it's like this: when you were a certain age, maybe when you were in your 20s or teens or whatever, maybe you could jump, touch the rim, dunk, or whatever. You just get out on the
Mhm.
court and start running, no warm up. You just jump out there and go do whatever. And sometimes time goes by, and you in your mind you still think you're that guy. you know I I went to the basketball court like recently, right? And I like I'm no John Morant or whatever, but I could jump, at least a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so I went and I was like, I'm about to go jump and just hang on the rim or whatever. And I got ready. I just, my body literally said, you can't do that no more. Like, just stop. It's like, I was like, man, sometimes you in your mind, you're like, yeah, I got it. But, and maybe I could have done it. Maybe I might have to do a video, make a video of me actually doing it to show. Maybe I still can. I don't even know. But I literally, the governor in my body literally said, don't do that. You see, that day has passed. So the point is that sometimes we might think, like, when we got married, some of us may have been married for 10 years, 20 years. And that's why, depending on the age of when you're back on the market, so to speak, and then you're divorced or you're single, especially for those people who are single, you might be thinking, the things that worked or would work or will work, to court somebody, or those things that you had that were attractive, to the women who you were courting when you were single, the last time you were single, might not work now. You might not be as fit as you were before. You might have a little bit of gray going on. You're older. You look like an older. So you might be looking at some of these women who are in a certain age range, and they might be looking at you like my dad's age or whatever. Not to say that it's not possible, but you have to come to that realization of what your new reality is. You're on the market, and you are, in a most likely going to be older, of course, if you got married for any period of time. You're going to be older. Now, you may be more financially capable, but if you have child support, alimony, these type of things, that financial mobility and fluidity that you had before might not be there. So your new reality may be you're operating as a man who's nearly broke. And that could break you. That could be a thing where that setback could lead you down if you start to think, if you don't understand the new reality that you're in and then navigate it accordingly. Some people, they get handicapped, and it's unfortunate. They get handicapped by the system. They get handicapped by child support, alimony, or whatever, and they, instead of adjusting their lifestyle, they start to run up debts, credit, start to not be forthcoming about their real financial situation. So then maybe a woman who they were courting, based on paper what they look like financially, they come to realize, well, yeah, he makes this much money, but 65% of his net income is going for alimony, child support, and lawyer fees or whatever it might be. And so this is something you have to understand. This is my new reality. Okay. And I have to be upfront about that. I first have to understand where I'm at and then navigate that accordingly. Some people, they come out and they are not the amazing soccer or football star that they were, and fit and strong and everything. And now they may be, got type 2 diabetes and heart trouble and all these things. And they still are looking for, the girl who won the 100-meter dash last season, who's in great shape and young and all that stuff. 20 years ago, that was could have been a match for you. But if you did not maintain that type of, fitness or lifestyle or whatever, it's not likely. And if that's not likely, it's not even a negative. It's just the reality. So you have to realize where you're at, and that's the biggest step in understanding what you can do, knowing where you're at and where you're starting new at. And so the people that struggle with that, I tend to see them continue to struggle, and until they get that under control, the success doesn't come.
Yeah. And we've seen this countless of times on TV shows or movies, and it's the stereotypical, like, old high school jock that was the football star, right? And all he had to do was like wink at the girls in high school and they fell in love with him and all that. But then when he's 30, 40 years old, he's still wearing his high school jacket and it's too small and it's up above his waist and he's still like, hey, yo, baby. Like, and they're like, what? Like, it's a whole, you gotta wake up. You're not that guy anymore, right?
Yeah.
But I also want to say, just to give, so guys don't downplay themselves as well, is it also sometimes works the other way, right? You might have been like, when you got married in your early 20s, like the shy guy, and like, people change looks. Some people get better with age. We're like, wow, who's that? He got a few, salt and pepper in his beard. He's, face is full. It goes both ways. So really takes, you don't want to sell yourself short, and you don't want to, have your head in the clouds thinking that you're the same person that when, you got the best girl available when you were the young kid, just getting out of high school. If you just got married and you're like, oh yeah, this is promising, but you never finished college, you never got a good job, you never got a trade, you're out of shape, and you still think you're that guy. No, the guy that got the ugly girl who got divorced now is all the girls are looking at him now like, oh, look at him, he filled out, he's got a good job, so look at it both ways. We have on here about like this differentiating. This is a big thing just in me and my personal life, and I talk to different people, especially our significant others and children as well. I want to don't get offended because I put them in the same category, but the big difference between needs and wants, because I know we hear this all the time as being fathers and husbands, is I need this. I think, no. You want this. You don't need it, because our needs are very few, but our wants are, and people mix them up all the time.
And I think people really need to know and be able to get a good grasp on differentiating your needs from your wants, because if you fall victim to chasing after your wants, you may not get what you need. And then guess what? You may be back in the same cycle again. You may be back divorced again. You may be back in the same situation. So identifying your needs, it's not to say you can't get what you want, but you have to identify the needs and separate them from the wants, and then say, this is what I need. Is any of what I want also there?
No.
And it does tie into whether a person should remarry or not, or when, or time frame, or what they should pursue. So it's kind of melts together. But and a scenario that I would look at for a person who has needs as opposed to wants, a person might they have a physical attraction to a certain type or demographic or whatever. Some people they might be obsessed with the thick Jap whatever, but hey, listen, you might want a thick Jap, but
I need a thick Jap.
Might be a need. I don't know. I don't know what category of okay, seriously, but but you may have a house full of kids and you work, and so you might actually need someone who is a willing homemaker and caretaker, to help you with that. And so you might not be able to go for maybe someone younger might be more interested in, doing their own thing and want their time. You might not be able to marry the hotshot, businesswoman who is going to be outside the house working or whatever, who still wants to maintain her career. You may want that, but you might need something else, or there's a certain personality type you might need. You might be, struggle, religiously. You need people around you who are more religious minded to kind of help, keep you, in a certain mode. And you might say, man, listen, I don't want to marry that, slightly older but very pious woman, but that might be what you need, as opposed to the younger woman who you may think that you're going to groom and shape and mold. The thing is, the reality is, most of the time you can't do it. The people they literally are going to be exactly what they're going to do. You can try. Yeah, but it's not impossible, but you can't bank and bet on that, because you just don't know, and you could wind up back in the same scenario. So identifying what you need versus what you want. Maybe you're a person who has certain issues in which you have a ceiling for how much money you can make due to your education, or maybe whatever it might be. Maybe your field that you've gone into, maybe you have some restrictions in where you can travel to. You might not be able to leave the state or the county. or you may have, like I said, you may have some issues with alimony or whatever it might be. So you might actually need someone who also can help financially. So you might have the one who oh man, she is wonderful, but she doesn't work and she can't make any money. She has no earning potential. She can't. I mean, who knows? The thing is,
Yeah.
you have to really identify what you need and make sure that you are realistic with that. Because, like I said, if you get what you want and you don't have what you need, that marriage is already going to be a struggle. And so it may be a situation. It could be a situation where you have to decide to delay or not get married until you can comfortably get what you need and those things that are strong wants, to where you say, well, listen, if I don't have these wants, then I can't do it.
And
Then you may need to delay marriage. So that's where I would look at it. If a person can't get a happy medium there, then they might have to put it off.
I want to. It's tied to this. I've seen multiple individuals, um, where it's not actively said, but it's very clear that when they're looking to preparing themselves to get married again, looking for future spouses, it was very clear to me, at least, that they wanted to marry somebody that would pretty much make their ex jealous, right? They wanted to like outdo their ex somehow, or like if imaginary, if their ex looked at, oh, look at who he married, like, oh my gosh, she's so much better than me, right? One, that's a clear indication that you are still emotionally attached to your ex. And two, that's a clear want. You're marrying somebody based off of this idea of like kind of like look at me now type of thing, right? Where you're not actually. And I see people that they take years and years and years to get married because like that's their goal of like I just got to marry someone that's like gonna just be off the charts. And everybody's like, oh, like look at who he got, and she left him, and now look what he got. No, 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 no. You need to look at, like we said, analyze your own situation, assess what you actually need in a spouse. And a lot of times when you do that, sincerely, the stuff you want will come along with it as well. Because even if that is your goal, which is stupid, like it's a dumb goal, right? But I get where it comes from. The word the I told you so or I got you is going to be like when your second marriage fails, and then no matter who you married, even if it was Beyonce or whoever, you're like, yeah, see, look, it failed with her too, yeah. So you're going to lose in the end anyway.
And that ties into the first thing we started with, was the clean break. That's a person who
Yep.
clearly is getting whooped. They're struggling heavily with getting a clean break. They are not
Yes.
able to do it. So, you got to go back to step one, get that clean break. I mean, do whatever the steps you got to do, and then you then proceed from there.
Yeah. So I do know that there's when men get divorced, there's men that will just remarry like right after they eat that, before they eat that, like they're just ready to go. But also you see a correlation with they're also in and out of a lot of marriages. But then you have the other extreme where there's men that uh, maybe he's listening or not, but I joke with them because I call them the decade boys. Like they will wait decades, literally decades, to remarry, right? Which is like, what's going on here? Like, are you a Christian monk now? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, some of these boys are coming up on a decade. These decade boys, yes.
Man, you
Yeah.
think about 10 years, like,
Yeah. And I mean, I think, I think some of these decade boys are these type of people, and I think sometimes man, they get burned or feel like they got burned pretty bad from uh the first marriage or whatever, or the most recent marriage, or um they're looking for something that is they're not able to reach anymore. That
mm,
could be it. So I mean, it's like, you know sometimes I don't even want to use the word settle because it has people take it negatively, like, oh
Right.
yeah, he settled for, but it's a situation where it's not settling. It's just the fact that you know it's like you could say, well, you settled for a layup. It's because you can't dunk anymore.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna get that slam dunk anymore. But as they say, a layup is still 2 points.
Still
So
2 points.
if that ideal, perfect, woman in your mind that you think, is going to magically come up and like you over whoever else, you know, I mean, maybe, but it's not likely, especially if it's been a decade, if it's been this long. Um, the likelihood of that happening is dwindling, especially if some of these delusional people who are there saying, some of the qualities and characteristics and it's like
Yeah, they kind of turn into the women that are like looking for that knight in shining armor, and then he never comes, and their knight in shining armor is a dog or a cat or something like that's what it ends up being.
So my question, I got a question for you. Are there any? Do you know of any scenario where you would say that you would advise a man not to not to pursue marriage? Just pretty much just put it on the shelf
Yeah.
for now. Do you know like anything off the top of your head that you can think of?
Well, yeah. So like, right, the first one that comes to my mind is definitely the financial situation, right? Where I mean, some men, it happens all the time after divorce. Some men are just living in their cars, like to try to just get through that tough period. So if you're like staying with other people and you're barely making the ends meet, and you know maybe that's not the right time to go pursue marriage. However,
She got a
it's
house.
still not impossible because you could actually better your situation if you have the right perspective and you're looking in the right areas for the right people. That's where it gets into look for your needs, not your want. Because it's very, I'm not saying it's very easy, but you can find a sugar mama. I'm
Hey,
not
listen,
like
hey,
depending on where you're at.
if she got a house, where do I sign?
Yeah, I mean,
Hey, look,
exactly.
I'm just saying, seriously. If you living in your car, I mean, at that point, I mean, it's like unless you seriously you're living in your car because it's literally an emergency type situation. You basically pretty much got put out, and so you're just trying to, because I think if it was just me and I got like put out of my house, like, okay, you're out of here. You just gotta. I probably wouldn't just go get an apartment immediately or buy another house or something like that. I probably would just be like, screw it, man. I'd lay the seat back and be like, whatever. I mean, I could probably
Yeah,
do it for a little while, but if you're in a situation where financially, I know people that they are not able to either due to credit or due to just the amount of upfront money that you have to put down for an apartment. They want like a couple months,
yeah,
a couple months salary. You need to, you need to have that. Sometimes you have to show it that you have it in the bank and different stuff or whatever. They can never get an apartment, let alone a house. In that situation, I mean, what you actually need, you know, is either just live in your car and save as much money as you can until you get your own place situation, or what you need is a woman who has her own house.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what you need. And that's not ideal. I would not advise a man if he has options to move into his wife's house. Um, I would not advise that. I think it takes a special type of woman to not use that against you at some point in time.
yeah. Yes,
Um, and they exist, but it's rare.
yeah,
Um, but if you're living in your car, especially if you got some people, they don't have no place for them or their kids to stay,
yeah,
so they can't even get custody or have their children because they don't even have a place for them to go.
yeah.
So in that case, hey, it kills a few birds with one stone. But it takes, like we said, understanding your new reality and then adjusting to that.
Exactly. Yeah, and then I guess the only other situations goes back to the other things we were talking about, like if you're in a position where you don't have a clean break, like you're in your car crying like I miss my baby. Like yeah, like maybe you need to figure that out before you actually get married. But in the long term, there's no situation I could see where a man, I will say a young man, like a man that's below 60, right? Where you're like, okay, you shouldn't get married or you shouldn't pursue marriage. At some point, you should be working to get yourself in a position like, okay, I am going to get married again, right? Because it's going to, there's so many benefits and blessings that come with being
Mhm.
married, and every man should have that as part of their life, right? Unless you're too old, like I said, you're above 60, and this is like, what's the point, right? Um, but any situation you come up with in any scenario, my advice would be to that person: get over that situation you're in the best you can, and move on to getting marriage. And sometimes in those situations, if you have the right mindset, the marriage can actually bring you out of that negative situation. So,
So, like, if you look at a person who is they their divorce finalized today,
mhm.
and they're not attached. They're like, all right, it's over. Hey, it was a good run, but I mean, I'm done. I'm not. I got a clean break. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm looking to, I want to get married again. I do. Um, what are some things in general that you could tell a person who they want to get married again, but they also want to try to maximize, the type and the quality of, a spouse that they could attract and they could get, So of course, I mean, it's not going to be a 10-year plan, but for instance, if he wants to get married within the next year, usually men want to do it quicker than that, but 6 months to a year, whatever. What could
Mhm.
he possibly do to try to maximize, the type of person that he can, attract?
So the first thing, and this is so like, let's go to sports analogies, whether it's basketball, football, any sport. And you talk to people who like, hey, how do you get good? Like, what you do is, if you want your kid or yourself to be like a great athlete in whatever particular sport there is, you try to get them great at the things that they don't necessarily need a talent for, right? You don't need a special skill for, right? Like, for instance, if you can teach a athlete to be like, you are going to work hard, like you're going to hustle on defense, you're going to do, these are things that like, okay, maybe I can't shoot so good, but you know what? I can hustle, I can work. The equivalent of that for a man that is in a divorce situation, doesn't matter what your financial situation is, doesn't matter what your looks are, doesn't matter what your personality is, you can get physically fit.
Mhm.
That is like, you just, all right, you know what? I work at McDonald's. I'm gonna try to get a better job. I don't got education, whatever. That's down the line. It's years and years of me having to do stuff. But right now, I can go walk. I can go jog. I can do some push-ups. I don't need a gym. I can eat right. I cannot. You could do these things right now, the day of your divorce,
Mhm.
and then other stuff can start falling into place.
Absolutely. It would, it would, if you actually were committed and dedicated for a year, 6 months even, yeah, you could make, major changes. And, you know, there's one thing that's universal. A man who's in shape is gonna have a market. He will have a market. you know,
Yep.
it doesn't matter if he has money. It doesn't even he could even be ugly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any ugly people. Everybody's, created in the way
Get
that
in shape.
Allah created
Wear
them.
one tight throw to the next Eid.
Hey,
Boom. You can
you
have
got
offers.
you got it. I mean, that's something. And I would say that another thing that a person can do, and this is usually if you have the most amount of ground that you can make up, you know, really the least amount that you do, or that
Mm-hmm.
you have done already. Like a person who has maybe just a high school diploma, for instance, within 6 months or a year, a person can actually get a trade. And so you've upgraded financially, and you've given not just financially, but you've given some stability to where not only, and you can do these two things together. Like if you just have, the basics. You get yourself a trade, and you get yourself in shape, and then you have the physical to go with that stability, and you're in a whole new ball game. Now, for a
Yep.
person who is, already, maybe a high earner, or has advanced degrees or whatever, or they already financially they have, in a really good way, then it really is in that fitness area. And also sometimes it has to do with really fixing that mindset, doing some self-reflection and realizing why the marriage didn't work, why your
Mhm.
success is not, with women is not where you might want it to be, um and spending some time really, figuring out, where you go wrong, where maybe you have some personality traits, or some issues that are not conducive for a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to, it can't be done on your own. Sometimes you have to ask the people that know you, hey man, seriously, what's it, what's my issue? And a lot of times people are uncomfortable with hearing from their friends or siblings or family members, the people that actually know them very well, and can say, hey,
Hmm.
what about me that really annoys you? Or what about me do you think that I should? Trust me, they know. They
Yep.
see you, they interact with, they know exactly what it is. They might not have said it, or maybe they have said it in a roundabout way, but you didn't take it. But I think for, and even for the, it doesn't just have to be for the high net worth individual. This is something, these are the three things that I would say that you can do: your fitness, and then leveling up, and then that personality, making sure that at the very least understanding your personality and how you are. So you
Hmm.
might say, well, I'm never going to change. Then that way, adjusting to your new reality, you can say, hey, listen, I know I'm this way. For instance, I'll give an example real quick.
Hmm.
I had a wife once that loved eating junk food. I mean, would just, I'm talking about anything that was sweet or whatever, she's eating it.
Hmm.
Me, I don't roll like that. Me, I'm like big pharma, big
Yeah.
food, they all trying to get us. So I'm like, no, we're
Yeah.
not eating none of that. So I'll be like, no,
Mhm.
and so the thing is, going forward is something that I have to make very clear. I don't eat, and I don't, you're not going to find a box of Little Debbie's just, on assortment, on top of my fridge. Like some people do. Like when we were kids, we used to sometimes go to people's houses. We think they were rich because the Debbie's would be up there and no one had rated them already. Like in my house, it was like,
There's stuff some in the box.
first
What?
of all, if a box of Debbie's came in the house, first of all, we would eat them immediately. And if there was even any left, if you weren't even eating them, you stole a bunch and hid them so you could eat them later. I mean, listen, that's just how we grew up, and it was like, hey,
Yeah.
you
No, I
got
used
to
to
get
think
it
the
while
same
you
thing.
can.
Going over is like some of my white friends, and like living
Yeah.
in the small town I was in, is like, you got a bowl of cookies on your table?
Yeah, it's
What?
yeah, you like the cookie tin that always had your grandma's sewing supplies and stuff in it.
Yeah,
You go,
yeah,
but you go to their house and it actually had cookies in the
yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
And you're looking like, and while you're at your house, you're like, you had that urge, like, I think I need to steal some of
Yeah,
these
like let me
cookies.
see something in my pocket. but yeah, but to get to the point
Oh man.
is you have to realize how you are. Man, I force my wives to work out. Like it's like that's part of the, yeah, you got to get in the gym. You
Hmm.
see what I'm lifting? You ain't got to lift the same thing, but it's an expectation. And
Yep.
some people just they just do not, they might not like to do those things, and they might not see the importance or whatever. So if you're that type of person, you realize what type of personality you have, and
Hmm.
there are some people that would be comfortable with, hey, I'm in great shape, but they're comfortable with someone who they might love, just that's not. And
Yeah.
I'm not even saying that that's wrong, but if you're the person who, like, you're literally, you're making sure that you're, at least trying to stay strong and fit, and the person you with is just like, nah, whatever. Like, you know,
They're like yum
if
yum
you,
yum yum.
yeah, if you're not a person that can deal with that, you have a personality type that is like that, then you have to really make sure that that's
Yeah.
clear. Or it may be a thing where, hey, people just can't do it. You're too intense. You're too much. So
Yeah.
maybe you might have to just be
I'll
like,
give an example related to that. Like, so like, for instance, I know myself, like I'm very argumentative, and it's not like a vindictive evil type. I like to debate. I like to have conversations and go back and forth. So like if I was single, I'm not going to go look for someone who's like meek, quiet, doesn't like to engage, that isn't like intellectual. I'm going to look for like, no, I need someone that's going to engage with me, right? And not get like, I'm not going to marry someone who's easily offended, because, I like going back and forth. If I have a debate or an argument with somebody and they're mad for a week, that's not someone I'm compatible with. So I know that about myself, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people, it's that self-reflection of like, kind of like it's kind of go back to the same thing. Like you need to recognize who you are, where you're at in all aspects of your thing. And I really like the point that you brought out about you have to ask somebody that's willing to actually tell you about yourself, right? Because and if you go that to that person who you think that is, and they're like, oh no, you're good. Everything was her fault. There's nothing wrong with you. Go ask somebody else. And
Yeah.
I want to put this out here for any of the men that's listening, because people make money off of this. Actually, you see this online where they're like coaching, male coaches. They're coaching people like, oh, you need to do this. You need to cut your hair. You need to work like this, and they get paid a lot of money to do this. If anybody listening to this wants to get coached or wants our advice, reach out to us. We'll do it absolutely free to try to help you out. It's nothing somebody should be just making thousands and thousands of dollars off to try to help you become a better person. And it won't even take that long. You just have to be receptive to the advice that's given.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just wanted to, before we wrap, go through a couple quick kind of rapid fire scenarios of what to look out for and what to kind of expect if you do if you're that person, you got divorced, you're looking to get remarried, and some of these things that and I know we've done other shows that kind of cover some of this stuff, but just real quick as a refresher, as a reminder. So for a man, if you are considering to marry a younger woman, and I'm guessing if it's younger, a person who's probably mid 30s, 40s, maybe in 50s or whatever. And then, a person can be, 50 years old and marry someone who's in their 20s. What should you, expect? A younger woman with no kids.
What should you expect? Well,
some of the things that you might not be saying, like I'll give you one very real scenario is that a lot of times a man, because he may still look fit and young and strong and he's financially stable and everything, so he may be able to attract a woman in her 20s or 20 years younger than him or something like that. But what you have to worry about is that after the physical stuff is over, that's a very small part. It's a very, very small part of the day. You'll realize that there's just not a whole lot of interaction as far as intellectual stimulation, conversation, the things that they like, maybe what they like to watch, maybe what they like to do, what they like to eat, all types of things. Like you can't eat like a 25-year-old. If you're 50 years old, that 2,000 calorie shake and ice cream blizzard double sundae or whatever that is gonna melt right off of her is gonna follow you around everywhere. So you might have to do that. That's something that you have to realize. Like, the things that you could do and eat and all those things are going to be different. And so if you plan on doing a lot of those things together, that's something that you have to look out for. There's
a big you could also say it's just like a cultural difference, because like for a real live example, there's a man I know who's in his 50s, maybe even 60s now, married someone in their high 30s or low 40s, and part of what she does is she's on social media like an influencer type thing where she's posting abayas and all, and he just can't, like, it's a big problem because he just can't relate to that type of world where it's like, what do you mean you're on social media? Like, he just can't relate to it.
Yeah.
right? Or there's another example is where I know guys that they married someone that's not even that too much younger, but they're young enough where they're like, oh, I want to go on a double date with my sister and her husband and this and that. And you're old, like, double date? What the fuck are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
you have to think about those types of things when you get someone that's younger.
Yeah. I mean, all that stuff, man. They, going, 2 and 3 days without sleeping or whatever, and you just bounce back or whatever. You might
Yeah.
not be able to do that.
Yeah. she's trying to she's at 10 o'clock trying to, like, oh, let's watch this movie. You went to sleep at 9.
Yeah, so I mean, just in short, those are things that you have to look out. Younger woman, no kids or whatever, and that's also could factor in. Like, if you have kids, she doesn't have kids, that could cause an issue. She might not like your kids or whatever. But what about like a younger woman with kids? I'll say, listen, if you
Man, that's probably like the worst scenario you could find.
you got all the you got all the issues of the younger woman without kids, plus them probably baby kids. They're probably baby level kids.
Baby kid, and most likely a young baby daddy that's just gonna be like, you have to probably whoop his ass one time at least.
Absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, you got to look at that, because I mean, especially you're in the time where you're like, man, listen, I'm done with having kids or whatever. I'm glad my kids are getting older or whatever. You might not be wanting to get back into, what kids do. Listen, a kid between the age of 3 and 6 will destroy a bathroom in so many different ways. I mean, they're gonna be playing with your toothbrush. They're gonna be doing all types of stuff that for your own kids you might be like, oh man, my kid. But for somebody else's kids, yeah, you might be. So this is the things that you gotta.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, yeah, that's probably one of the worst situations you could probably put yourself in.
We could go into a whole show on each one of these scenarios, but this is just a few teasers. But yeah, trust me. And you can, if a person is considering any of these matches, these types of matches, you can email us and let us know, and we'll give you more details on how to navigate or what to expect. But just expect that Fulana, one of her little knucklehead boys, is probably gonna swish your toothbrush around in the toilet one of these days. Just be ready, little bad kids. Send them kids to their daddy. That's what you need to do. What about an older woman with no kids? So she's older than you, got no kids.
So that's, I mean, here's the thing. So someone being older than you, and depending on what your age is, and we're going to say you're between 35 and 45, right? You're around that age, you marry someone who's older than you. The first thing that you have to probably consider is she like in menopause, actively in menopause, because that could have some intimacy issues between y'all. If she has no kids and she's not in menopause, is she going to be rushing you to have kids, right? And if it's right before menopause, I'll just say you have to assess whether you can keep up, because there's you might not be able to keep up. So
just to try to keep it PG, and sometimes it could be an issue of because a lot of times women they equate or they attach your desire for them to whether or not you care or love them at all or whatever. And sometimes if you have an older woman, you just might be feeling it like that. You might like her in general, and as far as just a day-to-day wife and activities, but as far as intimacy is concerned, you just might not be feeling it like that. It just
right.
It just is. It's a reality that I think some people just don't necessarily want to touch on, but it's real, and so that's something that could lead to a lot of frustration on both sides. And so that's something that you got to look out for. But I think this might be the worst of all the scenarios: the older woman with kids. So think about this. Let me give you this. She older than you, right? Maybe you're listen to me. Maybe you're 35, 40. She's, 50, 55 or whatever. She's got, 25-year-old daughter, running around. Now you're stepdaddy. She got, a 22-year-old son that ain't working or whatever, but he's up in the house. I mean, and, you could try to son him a little bit, but he might be able to whoop you. So it's like, you can't even get too mad at his mama because you.
Nah, you gotta give him the Ving Rhames. Wait, kill your ass.
Yeah, you got to do the baby boy sneak up on him.
Yeah. You want your mama, nigga?
But yeah, I mean that might be the most dangerous one of all because
I would say
she probably riding for her kids, still calling him baby. He's 30 years old with 3 kids of his own, but my baby,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's down there right with the younger with kids. Like you got to if you have a choice between the two, it's like which one's the lesser of two evils, right?
So we could do a whole 2-3 shows on that.
Yeah.
But what about if you marry a woman who is a serious upgrade financially? Right, you're making $40,000 a year, something like that. Average $50,000 a year, whatever. And you marry someone who's really is legit set. Maybe they're a trust fund baby. Maybe they inherited. Maybe their husband died and she inherited a bunch of money. She's stacked. She's rich, or she's way above your financial capabilities.
Yeah.
What are some of that? Because we can see the positives. Positives is the money. I mean,
yeah.
What's the negatives that could come with that scenario?
Well, the negatives. The first one is like, are you the type of guy that can be in that type of situation where your wife is the breadwinner, right? Are you content with yourself, or you have enough self-confidence where that's not going to bother you? 2, you have to be prepared for somehow that to be used against you at any point in time in your marriage. That, hey, nigga, I make the money here, right? You have to be prepared for that, whether it's an argument or whatever. And I guess the third thing I would put out is that you have to remind yourself that person actually doesn't need you. Mm-hmm. So at any point she could be like, yeah, he ain't cutting it. Let me go try the next guy out.
If you could give a brother in that scenario one piece of advice, I'm gonna see how smart you are, Dr. Griffin. I want you to earn this doctor title here right now.
All right.
If you listen to this scenario.
Okay, go ahead.
The woman is rich. She's loaded, stacked.
Yeah.
What's the one piece of advice you would give this brother if he's gonna marry her?
Legally marry her.
Go straight to the courthouse, bro.
If you gotta forge it, if you gotta get her sister to come in the cab and sign the papers, go legally marry her.
Go straight to the courthouse. Don't stop nowhere. Before you go to the hotel, go to the courthouse.
Honeymoon in Vegas. Do what you gotta do, man.
Hey, listen, man. Hey, because you know what? When the situation is flipped, that's what the women be trying to do. They be like, yeah, listen, whatever you do, don't sign no prenup, brother.
Yeah. I thought you loved me. Yep. Go shake shopping. Go down and find a shake that says it's mandatory for Muslims to get legally married in America. You gotta go do what you gotta do, bro.
Yeah, go straight to one of them liberal masjids and be like, yeah, let's get it. Sign it up.
Yep. Sheikh John Smith, who's white and has blonde hair, blue eyes, said.
All right, and
Uh,
the last one, the one that I mean, really, is well, I don't know how we can kind of put it, but where the woman is a downgrade financially. What if you're used to a woman? Okay, I guess the downgrade would be where you're used to a woman who is who works or it contributes financially, and you know that is how kind of you work with your lifestyle, and then you got a woman who really cannot contribute anything
yeah,
financially. um so you know, what are uh some of the things to look out for there?
I think here is going to be really getting used to a new type of lifestyle. That's the biggest thing because you might be used to certain types of things and your partner contributing. And like for instance, I'm married to someone who is like when she wants to do something, she's going to find a way to do it. She wants to go on vacation, and I don't have the funds, she's going to find a way to do it, right? And say I become accustomed to that, where I'm used to like going on certain vacations every year, and then all of a sudden we get divorced, and then I expect my new partner to be like, "Hey, you're supposed to be putting it on these vacations or on this new car and all that." You have to get used to that new type of lifestyle, and that goes back to Mubarak's great advice about distinguishing your needs from your wants, because this actually could be a very, very, very good situation for you if you can manage your new lifestyle and you have a good woman that you generally interested in, that she's actually putting herself in a situation, not herself, but y'all marriage in a situation of the natural order of things where she actually is dependent on you for what she needs and for what she wants.
Yeah, so I'll just add to that real quick is that you may have an adjustment in your lifestyle as far as financially and some of the comforts, but of all those scenarios, the likelihood of you having a healthy relationship, if you can get over the lifestyle adjustment and interpersonal, like you with, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the young ladies you married, the likelihood of having a productive and healthy marriage over you know, some of those other ones is much higher. So even though you might lose some financially, your happiness could definitely possibly go up, you know, and Allah knows best.
Well, there's studies out there that show that the poorer people are the happier people in like every society. So you may be more poor, but you'll be happier. So we're again, if you have any questions or comments, type them in the chat in the comment section. Email us at email a man's world at gmail.com. And just remember that when you are in divorce, it doesn't have it's not the end, right? We're playing video games. It's a reset button. You just have to assess your situation and do your best. Contact us if you need advice. Talk to your network to figure out your best way, your plan, so that you can move forward. So it could be a major comeback, and not a major setback, or like Mubarak said, snowballing to something even worse than what you were in before. So with that, thank you guys for joining us this week. We'll be back on next week, and we're going to talk specifically to the women on this same topic. So all the women that are catching this, tune in next week, and call in, text in with your questions and concerns. All right, thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alrighty, good.